Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Left right field towards the corner.
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio.
We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Pod Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast alongside Israel Gutierrez. I'm Jorge Sedano, and coming up in just a bit, we talk ping pong balls and probabilities, as we've got the NBA Draft Lottery tonight at 8:30 Eastern. Plus, obviously, we'll take a look at some schisms with the Clippers and the Bulls, and a little preview maybe of the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe some picks. But we start off with the Western Conference Finals, which begin tonight. And it seems like a no-brainer that the Warriors are just going to win this series. All 14 of our experts that are polled on .com, including yourself, have all picked the Warriors to win this. Now, I'm not an expert on .com, but I have the Warriors in 5, and I feel like I'm being kind with Warriors in 5. So is this just a foregone conclusion, or is Daryl Morey just going to, at the end of this, look at us and go, "Oh, we're all going to laugh at you, see the metrics"?
Is that Adam Sandler or is that Mickey Mouse?
Well, that was supposed to be Adam Sandler, but I guess it did sound a little bit like Mickey Mouse. We're all going to laugh at you.
I mean, okay, you start off with the regular season, of course, because while everybody will tell you the regular season doesn't mean as much because, when you get to the playoffs, those don't tend to translate, but it's the only thing you can look at. And when you look at how dominant the Warriors were against the Rockets in the regular season, you have to project and assume that that's going to be the same thing. Now, the Rockets don't have Patrick Beverley, and the reports are that he will not return in this series, which for Steph Curry's sake is a good thing because at least previous years, not so much this year, previous years Patrick Beverley has been an annoyance to Steph, and he's just an annoyance defensively, period. So that even further helps the Warriors because you're talking about Pablo Prigioni and Jason Terry at the spot. Now that's not necessarily who's going to defend Steph Curry, but that's who you're talking about playing at the point guard spot. And then, who on this team really affects and bugs Klay? I know Corey Brewer can stay with guys going through screens and everything else, but he's not Tony Allen. He's not, Kawhi Leonard. He's not any of those guys that can really stick with Klay and bother him and force him into bad shots. And plus, Corey's going to gamble every once in a while, and then he's going to get burned for it. So, my biggest concern if I'm the Warriors is who's going to defend those guys. Is it James Harden, whose name I haven't even brought up yet, which is probably not going to be a realistic option. He'll probably be, I guess you could say, hidden on Harrison Barnes, but the way Harrison has been playing, look, I'm talking myself into a Warriors sweep at this point, but I said the same thing against the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies obviously took 2 games from them, but the Grizzlies had a distinct style that really counters what the Warriors do. And Houston, they're going to try to outscore the Warriors, and I don't know how often that really works out. I'm intrigued by the Andrew Bogut, Dwight Howard matchup and everything else, but I just don't see it for the Rockets.
Well, I'm with you, and here's the other thing is that, the regular season aside where they beat them by an average of 15 points, you're looking at a Warriors team that has been clicking on all cylinders outside of a hiccup against the Memphis Grizzlies, and once they corrected that, it was like, forget about it. They're also arguably the healthiest team. Well, not arguably, they are the healthiest team in this postseason, with Maurice Bates will miss Game 1, but should be back in time for Game 2, or will be back at worst for this series. So that's the other part of the equation, is that you pointed out who's going to guard Steph Curry. Tim Legler said this on Colin today. He's like, the combined age between Prigioni and Jason Terry is like 97 years old.
#hate hard.
That just doesn't bode well for what the Rockets plan on doing. Like, what do you do with Steph? Like, do you put Corey Brewer on him? Do you just put Ariza on him? But then, I just feel like it just leaves you so many problems at other positions. And then with Harden, they've got a number of guys, multiple guys that they can certainly go with to guard James Harden, at least put different looks on him. So it just doesn't look very promising for Houston at all.
Oh, that Klay Thompson James Harden matchup's going to be great. You know, Klay obviously big time defender, and James is going to try to go at him. And in, you know, in the regular season, they did a good. I don't know if this was good, great, or just okay, because James did average 25 points a game against the Warriors, which was below his season average. Shot 40.5%, which is below his season average. 24% from three. So, yeah, they did a great job on James. Now, here's the thing about the way the Rockets beat the Clippers is that, you know, James and Dwight did their thing, and it was Corey Brewer. It was Trevor Ariza. It was Josh Smith that came up huge, especially in the last 3 games. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be possible in this series or if that's going to reoccur in this series because, again, that Warriors defense, it's not just – they don't just take away your top option. I mean, they're a solid defensive team all around. And, you know, unless Josh Smith is hitting threes and the Warriors aren't respecting him, you know, I don't necessarily see it between these two for the Rockets. But, hey, listen, if they decide to play Dwight Howard one-on-one, and I know Andrew Bogut's a great team defender, a great individual defender as well, but I think Dwight could have some success there. If they maybe try to slow the game down a little bit Memphis Grizzlies style and feed it to Dwight more often, but then again, you're playing against your own strengths at that point. You're playing out of character, and then, you know, you're probably working yourself into a letdown because, again, as much as you can slow the game down all you want, that Warriors team is still going to effectively score, whether it be, you know, 100 points or whether it be 120 points. They're going to find a way to outscore you because, you know, their actual efficiency numbers are just better. And so I don't know what the Rockets are going to have to show me in this first game, but again, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and again, look, we all know that it all starts with Harden on offense for the Rockets, and he didn't play all that great against them. I mean, granted, he put up 25 points a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, but he only shot 41% against this team and 24 from 3. So against Klay individually, he's only 11 of 30 from the field, 3 of 10 from three-point range. Actually, Iguodala's the one guy that he's had some success against, 6 of 10 from the field, 2 of 5 from three-point range. He's only 4 of 13 against Draymond, 1 of 5 from 3, 2 of 5 versus Sean, 0 of 1 from 3, and Harrison Barnes has had very mild success and very limited opportunities, 2 of 3 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. But reality is that he has just not been very good against this particular team, and it's not surprising because they've got so many guys on the perimeter, as we mentioned earlier, that can be effective against him. But really, the only way I think the Rockets can win this thing is what you pointed out, which is Dwight having just a crazy throwback series from 2009 Dwight, and Josh Smith also has a crazy series and keeps shooting awesome from 3 like he did in the last game basically against the Clippers, and then Steph just has an off series. All that stuff to me has to happen for and obviously James has to play well for the Rockets to win.
To the Rockets' defense, now, even though, like you mentioned, the 15.3 points per game, that's the largest regular season points per game differential between conference opponents in NBA history.
Yeah.
The previous high was 30. Then 3 of those games basically were without Dwight Howard because the first 2 2 of them he didn't play in, and then that last meeting on the 21st of January, he only played 24 minutes, had 5 fouls, 7 turnovers, just wasn't great. It was just coming back into his own. So, again, that's probably the biggest difference is the Dwight Howard factor. The way he played against the Clippers, I think, is encouraging for the Rockets. And at this point, the Rockets, they probably have to feel like they're playing with house money. They know they're the huge underdogs. They know they just escaped the Clippers and got to this conference finals, have won 2 playoff series. That's going to be famous. And they've got to feel free and loose and just play without any pressure. And that's when a guy like Corey Brewer will have a huge game. That's when a guy like Josh Smith will have a huge game, and Trevor Ariza can go nuts, and James Harden can start cooking and everything else. So if they look at it from that perspective and say, listen, we got nothing to lose, they could possibly play harder than the Warriors, make a few more shots here or there, and get an off night in one of these first 2 games in Golden State, and then all of a sudden they're feeling really, really good about themselves. But a lot of things have to line up properly, and I just don't, the Warriors, I just don't see them letting up. I feel like they had their slump. They had their little what's wrong with the Warriors moment, and I don't think it's coming up again, especially against a team that doesn't necessarily defend on the perimeter especially well. I mean, I could see a game here where Steph drops 40, and it's going to look pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, you said you've talked yourself into a sweep. I'm going 5 just to be kind as well. That's just kind of the way I look at this thing. Quickly on the East series, we don't want to get too into it because I know that it'll be discussed more tomorrow on the podcast since the game 1 is tomorrow. But there was some interesting audio that came from the Cavs shoot-around or practice the other day or yesterday, and it was about Kyrie. It was to Kyrie about LeBron. Now, Tristan Thompson the other day made a comment about LeBron being a great father and being like a fatherly-like figure or something to that extent. And a reporter then brought that to Kyrie, who, by the way, poor Kyrie, has been dealing with enough, okay? He's had the injury to deal with. Our man Mark Schwartz is basically asking LeBron a question about Kyrie while Kyrie's just sitting there, and about the no assist game back in Utah when he didn't have an assist in one game during the playoffs. Poor Kyrie's just shaking his head there like, hey, I'm here. I'm right here. I don't know if you realize this. Am I invisible here? It was like that Mindy Kaling commercial that's going on right now about her being invisible. But so Kyrie gets asked a kind of strange question about LeBron being a fatherly figure, I guess, and the reaction is fantastic.
Kyrie, Tristan calls LeBron a great father after Chicago game.
What?
Yes, he did.
Great father? Oh, great father. Oh, I thought he's. Oh, man, I interpreted that's completely wrong.
Okay.
I thought you said he was a great father to him. I was like, what?
Called him a great father. So
Yeah.
what type of parental role has he played for you and your teammates?
Oh, okay. So parental role? Honestly, I'm. He's. I don't know how to really answer that question. He's been a great leader for us. I have one father. That's my dad, Jorge Irving. But for us, in terms of learning the nuances of the game and also how to win on the court and also how to carry ourselves off the court, I feel like he's been a great influence in that role.
All I have to say is, I am your father.
I mean, and you already know the "Who's Your Daddy" chants are coming, right? From Atlanta fans.
You think Atlanta's going to do that? You think I could see like Boston fans doing that. Like I can see. Do you think Atlanta can bring it?
I can guarantee it. I think Twitter's a very powerful tool, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people in Atlanta on Twitter already planning this out. Let me just say this, because I tweeted a joke about this earlier, basically saying, I said, hey, Kyrie, did LeBron let you order off the grown-up menu when you guys went out to dinner as a family?
Hashtag great. Hate hard.
My hashtag was actually great question. Because this is what I feel sorry for those guys for. And it's to some respect I felt sorry for the OKC guys, Russell and KD, and some of the stuff they had to put up with. It's just this. It's the type of stuff they have to put up with when you get reporters who cling on to this storyline, to this narrative about, oh, LeBron the leader, LeBron the father figure, LeBron the big brother, and don't recognize how annoying that stuff is to the other guys. Like, Kyrie is younger than LeBron, yes, but he's a grown man. Kevin Love is younger than LeBron, yes, hasn't had playoff experience, yes, but is a grown man. Like, these guys don't want to hear that stuff. And Kyrie's answer was perfect. I couldn't make out what the heck his father's name was, too many syllables, but stop making that comparison. Like, he's not a baby deer. He's not sitting out there trying to learn how to walk. This guy is a superstar. This kid has a signature shoe for Nike. Stop making LeBron into his daddy. That is not the case. And then some people in Cleveland, of course, think I'm making fun of Cleveland. I'm not making fun of Cleveland. I'm making fun of the terrible questions that are being asked. And, I don't know who that person is. I might even know that person. And I apologize if I know you, but it was just dumb. And you got to recognize these players emotions and how they view things. And again, Kyrie, like, that's something that's going to annoy the bejesus out of him until they stop asking it. And you can see, I mean, you mentioned the one where Mark Schwartz asked, you know, does Kyrie get a pass, with Kyrie sitting right there as if it was LeBron James's choice. Like, it's all up to him who gets a pass, who doesn't get a pass. He's like the Santa Claus list, you know, naughty or nice. Like, LeBron's the one who's deciding all of these things. You know, again, not making fun of the team itself. The team could probably internally make, you know, joke about this stuff, but it's got to get annoying. And that one in particular, like, that one is a perfect answer from Kyrie, and hopefully it puts an end to some of this stuff. But LeBron doesn't really help when he says some of the stuff he does. You know, like, these guys don't know anything. I'm teaching them everything and all that stuff. Enough.
Yeah, he hasn't helped it, and we've talked about it a lot during the season. Where he does feel like it feels like he is talking about them like they're his children. So he's kind of fed into that narrative, and now we're on the biggest stage or getting close to the biggest stage, and more people are involved in regards to the media, and you're going to get these type of questions. So, I mean, it's not going to end. If they win this series, it's going to be more. They're going to get more of these type of questions in the NBA Finals. You know, once we get to the international media and the media that that doesn't regularly cover all the NBA games, they just come in and swoop in during the finals. There's going to be a lot of those, and a lot of those weird questions, like our boy, what's his name, Ramos, right? What's his first name?
I forgot, but he's a fixture in the NBA Finals.
Of course, he asks all the great questions. He's in there, and he just elbowed Tom, not literally, but
Emilio something? It's Emilio something.
No, that's the Spanish guy. Emilio
okay.
Tap Deportes. Emilio something. Tap Deportes. No, he asks good questions. They ask good questions, but it's funny because the guy, the Ramos guy, I had him on my show not too long ago.
I remember that dude.
Bobby Ramos. Thank you. Bobby Ramos. We had him on the show last year. He figuratively, not literally, elbowed Tom Haberstroh out of the way to ask a question in the last NBA Finals. So my guess is you're going to get more of these type of questions if you're Kyrie, so you might as well just get used to it. But yeah, I could get where it's just annoying for these guys. Like, I understand it.
No, I don't think they have to get used to this stuff. I don't think they should. I'd just be like, listen, I mean, just understand that my age, while I might be young in this game, doesn't mean that, you know, I need this this guidance at all times. Like, I've done pretty well. I was a Rookie of the Year. I was an All-Star and an All-Star Game MVP before LeBron was my teammate. Stop it.
Okay.
I just
Quickly on this, as we look at the conference finals, there's two narratives here. You either believe that team ball could prevail, or the best player on the planet will prevail. Now, 538, our friends at 538, and they've taken some stuff from Basketball Reference here, have crunched some numbers that LeBron is the single greatest conference finals performer in NBA history, just a 10th above Michael Jordan in their calculations. You have other names, obviously, like Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and Tim Duncan rounding out the top five. So what do you think is, because the way I look at it is this way. I think this Atlanta team, they haven't been able to knock down shots and open shots, specifically in that Washington series. I feel like at some point that may happen for them, because it happened for them plenty during the regular season, and I understand they're different games, the postseason and the regular season. So I do think Atlanta is more capable of giving the Cavs a much more difficult series than Chicago, because they can actually move the ball on offense and create problems for Cleveland's defense, which at times is still shaky on the perimeter. Whereas Chicago, even though they have individual talents on offense that are very good, they don't really have much of a system that makes you work, I think. I think it's just a bunch of individual talents just kind of imposing their will in those situations. So I do think this series is at least a 6-game series, potentially even a 7-game series. I think if the Cavs are going to win it, they got to win it in 6. I think if it goes 7, I think Atlanta could win this thing.
Here's the thing to me. The first place I go with this series is I don't trust that Kyrie Irving is going to play a 7-game series healthy.
Right.
Or close to healthy. You saw how it seemed like a simple misstep took him out of that game, and essentially took him out for a few days because he went on and didn't practice until Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, didn't practice, missed practice, whatever. So I have a hard time believing you're even going to get a 90% Kyrie Irving over the course of a series. All right, so that's where I start. And secondly, when you get to that point where you've got either a hobbled Kyrie or no Kyrie, it's going to be a lot of LeBron isolations. He hasn't been necessarily good in isos in this postseason, and the Hawks are going to flood him with defenders. And if that, that's fine as far as he's concerned because he loves to kick it out to the open man. But then your conference finals or your NBA finals berth is dependent, J.R. Smith not having one of those 3 for 18 games, on James Jones being able to stay on the floor defensively while also hitting those threes for you. Matt Dellavedova doing the exact same thing, being able to stay on the floor defensively while still, hanging on to that fire he was on in the last game against the Bulls. Like, there's a lot of things that would have to go right if that were to happen. And even with all that, I still have the Hawks taking it to 7 and winning in 7 because I have that much faith in LeBron and what he can do. But in the Hawks' respect, I'll say this. I don't feel like they've gotten any real familiarity from their opponents. If you think about that Brooklyn Nets team was playing toward the end of the season, the last month and into the playoffs, unlike they'd been playing all season long. So there's a surprise element there. And you're just that first playoff round where you're the top seed, where you're not used to being the hunted, all that stuff. So there's that adjustment period. The Washington Wizards, especially with Bradley Beal and Otto Porter, played nothing like they played consistently throughout the regular season. Brad was super aggressive. That team played with energy and shot threes, which they didn't do during the regular season. Now, with the Cavaliers, it sounds crazy, but the Hawks are going to say, okay, at least we know system-wise how to defend this team. We're not going to get a bunch of surprises. In fact, it's probably going to be a little bit more simplified because there's no Kevin Love out there. And Kyrie, again, isn't going to be 100%. I think Atlanta's defense is going to be better. And so even if Atlanta's offense struggles, I think these games are going to be played in the low 90s. And I think even if Atlanta doesn't necessarily find its stroke with those open shots, I do believe they'll be able to stay in these games, pull them out late. Obviously, the Cavs can do the same, pull them out late. But I do think it's going to be a series that sets up to where they're going to be relatively close games. And as long as Atlanta's offense is flowing, is moving well, then, they probably get the edge, in my opinion, because obviously the home court. And I guess you could argue the healthier of the two because most of their ailments are on the bench.
Right. I think I give Atlanta a real shot to win this series. I do. And I think that people are going to be like, you're crazy. But I think that they are primed to have their offense create problems for Cleveland's defense. I do.
And let's say this, too, because for everybody who says those Steph Curry, LeBron James finals would be epic, and I don't think they'll be epic. I think it'd be, obviously name recognition and draw a lot of fans.
But it wouldn't be a close series.
Remember how excited these folks were when Atlanta was playing the Hawks the 2 times
earlier this year.
I'm sorry, Atlanta was playing the Warriors, rather, the 2 times this year. The first game, I remember everybody getting into a tizzy because it wasn't on national networks, and they were like, why didn't ESPN pick it up? And then the second game, ESPN did pick it up, and it was, a great game. And so, you got 2 60-win teams in the finals. That's sellable. So I don't want to hear that nobody wants to see Atlanta versus Golden State. It might end up, especially the way the 2 offenses work, might end up being the better matchup.
Yeah, I think it would be the better matchup. I just don't think – right, exactly. I think that for the basketball nerd would probably like Atlanta better potentially. But I think that right, the casual audience wants LeBron because he's the best player on the planet and he's the most recognizable name in the sport. Arguably, there's polls now that say that Steph has become the face of the league now. But you get my point. But so yeah. It's going to be an interesting series certainly to see how kind of it evolves. And I think Atlanta needs to if they get game 1, I think that all of a sudden they're kind of on equal footing because a lot of the prognostications, whether it's Vegas or our BPI or even 538, they all feel that, they all feel that Cleveland is certainly the favorite in this particular matchup. So we'll see how it works out. Coming up next, we talk ping pong balls and probabilities. That's next here on the NBA Lockdown podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome back to the NBA Lockdown podcast alongside Israel Gutierrez. I'm Jorge Sedano. All right, so we've got the NBA draft lottery tonight. The Wolves have the best odds to win, but the Lakers and Knicks are both in the top 4. Now, look, I know that people think this thing is fixed, and if the Lakers win, we're going to hear conspiracy yelling and screaming and all this stuff. And same thing with the Knicks. Who needs this the most, in your opinion? I guess that's the question.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned the conspiracies because they're pretty ridiculous. And let's start with this. All right, you said the Lakers, right? That's probably conspiracy theory A, but there's about 4 more, okay? If New York wins, and they have the second best chance, they will just have to leapfrog Minnesota. That has conspiracy theory written all over it. Of course, because it's New York. And, well, I don't know if either Karl Anthony Towns or Jahlil Okafor will be a transcendent big, but when they won it in 85 rather, it was the transformative big, the transcendent big. It was Pat Ewing and the quote-unquote frozen envelope. So there's going to be conspiracy theories there. We mentioned the Lakers. I think there'll be conspiracy theories if Charlotte wins because of the MJ factor. Plus, they're 9th in that situation. Clearly, there'll be conspiracy theories if Miami wins it, or even if they fall into the top 3 as sort of a makeup for LeBron because the Cavs, same thing happened to them.
Right, which, by the way, at number 10 has never won the number 1 overall pick, and that's where Miami is right now.
Chicago wasn't number 10 when they got Derrick Rose?
I'm looking at it here. Not the number 1. Chicago was, at least in our notes, it doesn't say. They might. Let me see. Let me look that up real quick, just so.
Well, I'll keep talking while you look that up because I got one more conspiracy theory, and that's of course the Oklahoma City Thunder, because you've got if they win it, that definitely keeps Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in one of our coveted small markets, middle of the country. They're not going to fall apart. That's going to stay strong. I mean, you could make arguments for almost for pretty much half the teams in the lottery, and never mind that every team has a representative in that room witnessing the drawing. Every team, okay? The same 14 balls in the lottery machine are used for all 3 selections. And what does that mean? If these balls were quote-unquote weighted or whatever, so a certain 4-number combination would come up, it would come up every time because it would be the same 4 balls that are put back in there, all right? And there's videos. The league puts out videos every year of the whole thing with people watching, and it's just like, all right, if that's not enough, I don't know how this is ever going to die. So in that respect, put the conspiracy theories away. In terms of who needs it most, well,
by the way, Chicago was 9. Chicago was 9, and there's been 2 teams that have won it at 9, and most recently was Cleveland last year. So Chicago and Cleveland have won it at 9. And number 10 or beyond has never had the number 1 overall pick.
Not number 1, but they've jumped into the top 3 before.
They've jumped into the top 3, but not the number 1.
Right. Who needs it most? Listen, it's hard to argue that Philadelphia needs some positive things going in their lives. Because, the tanking discussion has been going on for years now, and Sam Hinkie is, just setting up for this draft, and there's a probability, there's a ton of possibilities for them. If they fall out of, they could get Miami's if Miami falls back from 10.
Yeah. Right.
So I think
they could get 3 lottery picks, technically.
They could. Right.
Yeah.
So I think Philly could probably use it the most in terms of just turning that franchise around. I got to go with the Lakers after that. because, of course, if they fall – now, they could fall out of the top 5. They'd have to fall down 2 spots, so 2 teams would have to leapfrog them. But if they lose that, it's not theirs if they're not in the top 5. So that's critical for the Lakers because not only would you have this presumably high-quality pick, but you've got Randall coming back next year. So that could be a giant boost for the Lakers, who obviously have some money to spend. I would say Philly first, Lakers second in terms of who needs it the most. I'd be pretty intrigued if Utah somehow finds a way to get in that top 3 or in
Good
the
Lord,
top spot.
Denver number 12?
Yeah, well, I'd be intrigued because they ended the season so strong. They've got such a what looks like a high quality young core. Add another piece into there, whether that's trade bait, whether they have the chips to make a ginormous trade, or they just get better to the point where the next 3 or 4 years they're scary good. They intrigue me a lot too, but that's just a random thought.
I feel like if Miami wins it, because Alonzo Mourning is representing them, I feel like it's going to be the lottery's going to go long. Because as much as I love Zoe, you and I both know he's a little long-winded, right? So it could be like
a little. That might be the understatement of the podcast season.
At this particular time, I want to thank Adam Silver and the Ping Pong Balls for getting us the number 1 overall pick.
And he's like, wait, let me go back. Let me start with David Stern. And then he just gives a history of why the lottery and the East. Yeah.
We love Zoe, but he's a little long-winded.
Love Zoe.
That may not be the best thing for him.
I'll never forget his jersey retirement ceremony with Stan Van Gundy. And the opposite locker room, like, what in the world is happening? Get that man off the court. It's very funny.
Furious, but yeah. So anyway. Of the 14 teams in the lottery, the Orlando Magic have made the most number 1 overall picks. They've had 3. On the other end, half of the teams have yet to pick first overall. Denver, Indiana, Miami, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, and Utah are teams that have never picked number 1 overall. So, going to be interesting, or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it won't be interesting. Actually, maybe it'll just fall right into place, and everybody just be like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. All right. So now we've got tensions. We've got a schism. Remember back in the day when there was a schism? That was a great word that they used when Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers were playing together, and Favre said, "I'm not here to mentor anybody." Blah 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 blah. So we've got schisms now. Now, apparently, according to CBS Chicago, there's a schism between Rose and Butler, where Rose has been a little passive aggressive towards Butler, kind of being the guy. And, getting all this love. And then there's talk about Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan doesn't want to be third fiddle. And Chris Paul certainly has a penchant for riding guys and kind of calling a horse's bleep to his face. That doesn't necessarily always rub people the right way either. So what do you make of all this stuff? Because let's start with Chicago, because I don't feel like either of those guys are tradable in this sense. If I'm Chicago, there's no way I'm trading Jimmy Butler, even though he will have value if you if you sign him. But Derrick Rose, I don't think is tradable. Like I may be wrong on that. I guess we've seen contracts that are worse than that and more tradable, or not as tradable ideally. But I just feel like Chicago's stuck with these 2 guys, whether they like it or not, because it's what's in the best interest of their team.
Yeah, so when I first read that, I was a little surprised. But then I said, if you actually think about it, it does make a lot of sense. In terms of personality, I could see Derrick Rose absolutely being a passive-aggressive person in that situation because he's never been the big vocal guy, never been the big leader. And if it annoys him that Jimmy Butler is coming to his side of the floor, even when he's got Matthew Dellavedova in front of him, Derrick Rose does, and can take him anytime he wants, yeah, that could be aggravating, but he doesn't want to be somebody who sort of, rocks the boat and, so everybody will say he's a bad leader, so he takes sort of a passive-aggressive approach, which in my opinion is always worse. It's like, Eric Spoelstra used to say this all the time, you never want to sweep anything under the rug. You want to just get it out in the open and deal with it, otherwise it festers and it just becomes a bigger problem. So there's that. And Jimmy Butler also, he bet on himself this year, yada, yada. succeeded and everything else. But Jimmy Butler has to look at Derrick Rose and say, D. Rose, no offense, you're great when you're on, but how much does he make other guys better? How much does he look for the pass, as easily as somebody like LeBron does or what have you? So Jimmy has to go get his own, because he knows if he stands around and waits, it's not going to be as if Derrick Rose is going to set him up cleanly every single time, more often than not. So I could absolutely see that happening. Now, in terms of the Chicago Bulls front office, as I've been told, I've heard that they're not losing Jimmy. Like, they're not going to be outbid for Jimmy. They'll match whatever. He's going to get his money. So then it becomes, okay, if you guys can't get along, which one am I taking? Am I taking the guy who's on the uptick and the guy who, when everything was on the table for him, responded with a career season? Or are you taking the guy who keeps getting hurt and the guy who has a problem, supposedly, with the guy who's emerging on his team? If I'm the Bulls, I say whatever I can get back for Derrick Rose, I'll take back for Derrick Rose. If there is a trade option. Personally, I don't think they would do that to the city of Chicago. I don't think they'd do that to D. Rose after, all these years. I just feel like they would probably put it on the hands of, and let's be honest, the next head coach, to be able to figure that out and get those two on the same page. Because part of the reason I was so surprised about it is because you didn't really see any signs of it during the year, so it couldn't have been that bad. Now, I'll let you set up the other one, because this one, I'll let you start on the other one, rather, because the Clippers one I find wildly intriguing.
I do find it intriguing as well, only because this notion that DeAndre Jordan, and I don't know how you feel about it, but the notion that DeAndre Jordan doesn't want to be the third fiddle, well, the reality is, when you're a limited player offensively, what are you supposed to be? Now, granted, that's not trying to diminish his impact on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, we saw what happened when he was off the floor in this last series. I mean, they were minus a gazillion, it felt like.
Yeah.
So I understand what he means to that team, especially on defense, because the team is just not very good defensively. And he obviously masks a lot of their potential problems on defense. But look, man, when you got the guy who has the ball in his hands is always going to be the first option, no matter what. That's just the way it works, regardless of what team you're talking about. So now with Chris Paul, you were talking about it, how, Spoelstra made the comment that you don't want to let things kind of fester, basically, that you want to attack things right away. Well, that seems to be the approach that Chris Paul takes, whether people like it or not. I think that's probably the best way to handle it. Now, not everybody can handle that kind of criticism at the moment, and sometimes maybe as a leader, maybe Chris Paul needs to kind of dial it back down a little bit and just realize, all right, maybe there's a time and a place to have these conversations if those are the issues that are kind of festering between these two. But ultimately, I just feel like DeAndre Jordan needs to understand his place within a championship team. Like, no matter what team he goes to, he's not going to be the first or second guy based on just the makeup of the player that he is.
Yeah, and okay. Now, I'm not saying that DeAndre Jordan is a Chris Paul creation, okay, the way you could argue like a Kenyon Martin was, a Jason Kidd creation / Richard Jefferson back in those Nets days. But clearly, having a team with Chris Paul there, and to some respect, Blake Griffin, who obviously takes up a lot of the defense's attention, that definitely helps DeAndre Jordan. Now, you mentioned the plus-minus numbers with D on and off the floor. Like that's not a Chris Paul creation. That just goes to show you that he's so physically imposing as an athlete and as a rim protector that, he makes a difference. But you have to sometimes think about your situation and wonder, is it going to be better somewhere else? Let's just say, I don't know. Let's just, throw him on any other good teams out in the Western Conference. If he's with Portland, will he be as dominant a figure as he was at times without, a classic sort of point guard? Damian Lillard is more of a scoring three-point shooting guard. Oklahoma City, like, is he going to be a real threat down there when essentially it's a bunch of isolations and whatnot with KD and Russ? Like, you have to consider, like, you have to stop feeling yourself for a second and consider the circumstances here and what makes you better. So if dealing with Chris Paul if Chris Paul is essentially telling him to work on his free throws, work on your damn free throws, man. Work on your free throws, because then not only are you great and potentially, you know, an all-star and an all-NBA, everything else, and maybe we get better, but then you're also not like a joke. Like you're not an embarrassment to the team when you're shooting 36 and hitting 11, you know. So I don't understand if I'm DeAndre. If I'm DeAndre, I'm saying to myself, I'm going to listen to this guy. I'm going to work. I'm going to deal with the yelling because he's trying to make me better, trying to make us better. Chris Paul isn't going at him for, you know, the way Kobe went at Shaq, as if to say, hey, he's holding me back. No, he's trying to push you to get better. And if that's the case, now, again, Chris Paul can grind on people reportedly. And, you know, there's even he and Blake aren't necessarily buddy-buddy. But if I'm DeAndre Jordan in particular, I'm sort of weighing my options and saying, look, it's not always greener on the other side. And if they offer him max money, which some people argue isn't, you know, he might not even be worth, if they offer him max money, I would recommend he stay and deal with the Chris Paul situation. But I don't see this breaking them up.
I'm with you. Now the question is, do you give him 5 for 100?
Me personally, I like the idea. It's really tricky because, you know, he's such a defensive presence, and defense obviously is very important. But if you're the Clippers, can you find a way to get a cheaper defensive-minded center like and not this guy obviously, but and there's not a ton of them around the league. To take a look at a guy like Andrew Bogut, and I know he doesn't, you know, there aren't like dime a dozen. He's not everywhere around the league where you can just pick up an Andrew Bogut, but clearly he has a great defensive effect on that team. And this year, making 13. Next year, you know, I guess he had one of those back front-loaded deals, but he's making 13 this year, 12 next year, 11 the following year. Like that's less than 20. And that gives you more wiggle room. And so you start to wonder, okay, can they sort of devise something a little bit differently where Blake has a little bit more room to operate maybe because he doesn't have this anchor in the middle who basically is only effective there via the lob, and, you know, defenders are coming your way. Now, those two have obviously developed the chemistry. Blake and DeAndre have tossed lobs to each other and everything else. But, you know, with Blake's game emerging, maybe you want to give him more space. Maybe as the Clippers, you want to look at yourselves as something of an offensive juggernaut, like, you know, the Warriors were this year, and maybe can do without DeAndre because the positives that you can get by trying to find a way to use money elsewhere, you know, makes you better. But that's a tough spot for Doc because, and look, I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen, and I'm not saying if they lose DeAndre Jordan that they just don't fall apart because he's that important to them. But it's something that Doc has to think about, and he can't just fall in love with his big three and say, well, it's just about everybody else because, yeah, it sometimes is about the supporting cast, but you've got to find a way to be able to pay those guys. You got to find a way to draw people in, and at this point, yeah, it's probably there might be a decision to be made there. But given the way Doc talks about him, I have a hard time believing DeAndre's going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think that that he's going anywhere, to be quite honest with you. I just feel like they need that defensive anchor. They don't feel like they're going to have there's no one really available for them to bring in, even at a cheaper price, I don't think, right. That would make enough of an impact. So here, they just don't have a lot of maneuverability. So, because again, I believe they'd still be taxpayers potentially, even without DeAndre. I could be wrong on that. But even if they have room, it's not going to be enough to bring in someone that you say to yourself is going to make a huge impact. I mean, what are they going to do? Maybe bring Tyson Chandler in on the cheap for
they're looking at
two?
They're looking at $60 million. That's probably without Jamal Crawford's option being picked up. But yeah, so they don't have a lot of maneuverability. You're right.
Right, unless you're going to bring in Tyson Chandler on the cheap.
Yeah, and given their lack of depth,
that's really the only option.
They don't have a lot of tradable pieces either.
Right. He's the only – right, they don't. And he's the only guy that I think could fit that role, even at this stage of his career, for a little bit. And he's
because you're not going to get like a Greg Monroe on the cheap because he's going to be looking for big money. You know, Robin Lopez?
Maybe. I guess Robin Lopez could be.
There are guys you could probably talk yourself into. Heck, I mean, skill set-wise, and I know, you know, there's a lot more to it than size and athleticism, but skill set-wise, Brandon Wright is is a similar type of player in terms of, you know, can jump out the gym, long, athletic. I don't know if he's that,
but is he good enough with bigger minutes? Like, he's a limited
Right.
minute kind of
course.
guy, you know?
Right.
So it's, that's the thing. Maybe you bring in, I just don't know what he's worth either on the open market. So it's like, here's the thing. The next couple of years, I think, will be interesting in regards to free agency because we don't know what guys are going to be worth. Because you think ideally 5 for $100, that sounds crazy, but once the new salary cap kicks in, it's not going to probably be that crazy.
Yeah, no, it won't be. It won't be. There's going to be people like overpaid like crazy, at least when you compare them to the numbers right now. But it should be interesting. And like I said, I don't know if DeAndre is going anywhere. I'd like to see how they address this issue that they've got and see if it's real or if they kind of dismiss it. But yeah, I have a hard time believing Doc's giving up on his core.
Yeah, I do too, but I guess we'll kind of wait and see. All right, that'll do it for us. You can always check out the podcast. We're here 5 days a week for you during the postseason. Don't forget, you can follow Iz on Twitter at @IZGutierrez, myself at Sedano ESPN. And by the way, my radio show will be basketball intensive these next couple of weeks. We're only really just doing the NBA. Because we're leading into the conference finals games, so we'll have either 30-minute or 1-hour shows, and the podcasts are always, 25 to 45 minutes anyway. So a lot of basketball in those too. If you don't get enough of your basketball fix here, you can download my podcast, The Sedano Show, at ESPN.com/PodCenter, or on iTunes. Just put in The Sedano Show. So, Iz, thanks for the time, brother, and I'll talk to you again later this week.
You got it, man.
All right, that'll do it for us. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNRadio.com. Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.